30th, 2020 work session. We've got several items on the agenda. Before we get started, I want to say wish happy birthday to Mr. Squire J.W. Blackburn. It's his birthday, and he is eating a hot fudge sundae for his birthday, and happy birthday, Squire Blackburn.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I wish you had bought all of us a hot fudge sundae, but that's okay. We'll forgive you on that one. All right. First item on the agenda is election update by our county clerk, Jeff Hancock. Mr. Hancock, welcome. And before you get started, an excellent job. Just an excellent job for our voters in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Glad to be here today.
Okay, let's let you begin. I'm going to turn the camera so you can be seen. There you go. There you go.
Fiscal.
Okay.
Squires, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. The election cycle started off about 50 or 60 days ago. And when it did, we really didn't have a game plan or anything in place. But with the ability where we put a marketing plan together and started making decisions and started getting a lot of direction from the Secretary's office and from the Governor's office, we were able to pull off an election.
Go ahead.
We were able to pull off an election.
Hold on. Andrew, do you know what that's causing that?
Yes, I do. It's fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We were able to pull off an election that was majority mail-in ballots, but also gave all the citizens in Franklin County not only the opportunity to vote, but the opportunity to vote the way they wanted to vote, which was in person. Overall, we ended up with approximately 6,000 residents in Franklin County be able to vote in person. They were either able to vote in person on election day, or they were able to vote early in the precinct headquarters that we had set up. I'm very proud of this. I feel like all the Franklin County residents felt like that they had their opportunity and their choice to voice their opinion their way. We never had a line on election day, even though we voted 2,200 people on election day. We never had a line that exceeded 15 minutes. And that's a pretty impressive task. We went to 3 locations instead of 37 locations. We were able to do this with 3 locations. Our task has just started though. I want to just explain that we have to start today. We have to start planning for what November looks like. And I'm going to ask at some point for each and every one of your all's help. I already have a plan that I'm starting to draw up, but I'm going to need each magistrate to help me along the way as well. And being able to establish a location that best suits their voters in their magisterial district for them to be able to get to. Because I want to start planning to make sure that November is successful and that we lead the way for the state of Kentucky, just as we have in this primary. But I want to make sure our general is just as successful as this primary was. I appreciate your support all the way through. I'm open to any questions. I think I've got another for paying election bills. If we want to talk, do you want me to go ahead and talk about finances at this point, Judge, or do you want me just to stop there?
Finances for the
Election.
No, let's wait till that item comes up.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
All right.
Jeff, normally voting precincts or voting areas are in schools. So will you still consider using schools in November?
If we go with the plan that I've written, and once again, all my plans for November are in pencil, I will go ahead and tell you. Because I can't really make any set plans until we get some direction from the governor and or the Secretary of State on whether they're going to continue to do an expanded absentee. The expanded absentee is going to be a must for us to have a successful election. This COVID virus is not going away. Matter of fact, we're looking for it to get worse before it gets better. Mm-hmm. And I think in November, if everybody that's correct out there across the country, we could see a real resurgence right during this time. Truthfully, if we'd have done the election on May the 19th, we had less cases in Franklin County on May the 19th than we did on June the 23rd. So we have to plan diligently. We made a plan and put a plan together that A, Franklin County could afford, and B, that kept all the citizens safe. So I will do that again for the general, and we'll make sure everybody gets the opportunity to vote. I would assume that we're gonna see a hybrid of some type, Judge. I would assume that we're gonna still have an expanded mail absentee vote, but I don't know how much the state will cover of the cost of it. They did cover some cost on it with envelopes, with some mailings and stuff of that nature. So I would assume that we're gonna have some type of hybrid, and regardless of what happens, I wanna go into all 6 magisterial districts. I wanna locate and find a location that every magistrate would have a voting location, precinct, for lack of better words, in their magisterial district. I would want to go with each and every magistrate to identify this, what best suits the needs. They know their citizens. They know what their 8,500 citizens need. They know what they want. So I would take the time to go with each and every individual magistrate. I would pick a location, and I would go with them to make sure that we had one super precinct in every magisterial district.
It's a great idea. Jeff, obviously today you announced the results of election a week ago, and coming in November, that would be a catastrophe in a presidential election for a state not to be able to, or states not to be able to have the ballots cast or voted, counted at the end of the day, whatever that is, so to determine who's going to be president of the United States. So it's obviously going to mean that absentee ballots are going to have to be received by X date or whatever, and I don't know what that date is. Do you see some type of federal guidelines coming down to states, which would in turn send them to the counties saying that these particular guidelines you'll have to follow?
I'm assuming I would assume that we'll see some of that in July and August. That's what I'm, waiting on this is not the right plan. The right plan is to just assume that this virus will be exactly where it's at today in November. So that's what we need. And that's what I said. I can't overly make plans. I can start making stuff and I can start penciling stuff in, but I can't make solid plans until we get some understanding from the state and the federal level on what they're wanting and how they expect all the returns and all the results to get in. Because I agree with you. If I told everybody in November, we're gonna vote on November the 3rd, and I'll tell you about November the 15th who won, I just don't think it's gonna go over real well.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that would go very well at all. Okay, Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Clerk, we certainly want to thank you and all the staff who put a lot of hours, man hours, woman hours, working really hard. Can you tell us how many staff were dedicated to this process, just so folks at home know how laborious this really was to carry out in the lengthened and the additional format that we had?
Yes, ma'am. We had 3 of the full-time staff. We had Megan Fryman, which is my head election officer. She does an amazing job. If you all haven't came over and seen her over at the election office, you should. She did a phenomenal job. Brooke Cunningham, which is her second in command in the election office. We were lucky to be able to take Charlie Pearl from the motor vehicle side and bring him over into elections for this. We were lucky enough to be able to hire part-time. We brought in Kelly Everman. Kelly made everybody that called into the clerk's office think that we were the happiest people on the face of the earth. She just did an excellent job. And I've already told Kelly there is a place for you in November. Please make sure that you schedule out time for us from September to November to work with us again. And she has agreed to that. I used Polly Hancock, my daughter, to answer phones during this period of time as part-time employee. And then we had 12 election officers. Now, what was really cool and unique about these election officers, they alternated every other day. And during that period of time, they helped me stuff all these ballots. I used a mix of youthful, high school graduates that are all leaving for college to stuff most of my ballots. And they did a wonderful job. We sent out 15,631 ballots, and we sent out 10 total without ballots in them. We sent out 1 wrong ballot. 11 wrong ballots out of almost 16,000. I was tickled to death. I thought, man, this is just, we did a really nice job getting them out and receiving them back in. So overall, it took about 20 total people on an alternating schedule to pull this off.
One more question for you, Mr. Clerk,
Yes, ma'am.
if you would. Can you talk to us and let us know if there were any equipment issues? I know in the past when you've come before us to discuss election cycles, you've said, you know, I want to maintain, if I go into a primary, I want to maintain the general election as I've used in the fall. Certainly, some of that may be dictated to you due to the nature of the new circumstances that we're under, but it's just trying to figure out if there were equipment issues that we need to overcome between now and then.
For the most part, Squire Sebastian, we had a really uneventful equipment election, except for on election morning, I had one of the e-scans, and I think it's just par for the course. I had an e-scan that just absolutely refused to work. I was lucky enough that I had planned for that, and I had a backup e-scan right there in location. I actually worked a precinct all day on election day, and I'm humbled by how hard of a job that is. I would recommend all of the magistrates, and I'd say you're all rolling your eyes at me at this point. I can't see the computer screen, but I would recommend all of you to work a precinct one time. It really allows you to get out and see the people in the community. It was hard work. It took a lot of effort to get everybody through, and I'm amazed by the people that do it year in and year out with very little pay.
I did it 6 years in a row.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've done it as well, and it's very humbling, and it's a very important thing to do for your fellow man, that's for sure.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Hancock? Squire Tracy?
Jeff, I just want to say great job to you and your staff. You and I spoke about it. So great job, kudos, and I know you'll be ready for November.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, anybody else? Hold on. Anybody else? Okay, once again, Jeff, we'll see you in just a moment. We'll talk to you in just a moment anyway.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, let's get everybody dizzy as this thing spins around. Sorry about all that, people out there. I'm sure a little dizzy. Okay, let's go to the next item on the agenda. That's administrative code. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the administrative code. I've asked for you to present something. If you have something, is Rick Sparks on here? I don't see him. Rick, are you on here? Rick Sparks?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about my delay. We've been Zooming our criminal court today, so that was a very interesting and exciting transition for those of you who have not tried to run a full docket remotely, etc. with preliminary hearings. It was definitely a challenge and a new experience in this brave new world. But yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna just, so I'll start with each magistrate. I'll go around to you. And if you have a particular item that you want to discuss, talk about, and we will talk about that. And then
Oh, really?
I want Mr. Sparks, if you don't mind, and Ann is on here too, to talk about the codification and what that's entailing, because that really has been, that will be part of the administrative code as well, right?
Well, the administrative code will be incorporated into the codification, correct. A couple of weeks ago, during COVID, etc., we received the first draft. That's been circulating for comments. Frankly, events took over for me, and I have not had a chance to give that the diligence that's been required to make any comments back, etc. Part of that codification process will be to update some obsolete provisions, not only in this section of the code or this section of county ordinances, but the overall county ordinances. And they've done a really good job putting together the first draft. So I'd say this month, now that things are opening up and people are having get their backlogs out of the way, we ought to be able to respond and get something to the court in the next 60 or so days to take a look at for approval and some other work. And I can't speak for Ann, but I know she had a copy of it. Betty Jo has, Robert's had, Tamara circulated it. I keep emailing it to myself to remind me to take a look at it tomorrow, and hopefully I'll get to that quick.
Okay? Everybody, okay, Squire Sebastian, you wanna start?
Well, I can, Judge, thank you, I appreciate, you letting me kick this off here. If you remember, last year I had circulated 13 pages of material, so does anybody have that in front of them?
Don't think so.
So it's probably better to move on to somebody else. So I'm hopeful that we will come back to this, because Judge, if you remember, you had dispatched me to work through that 13 pages with Counselor Sparks. And I had come back to a court meeting and I had broken those items down into 3 areas. But without all of that in view, it probably is gonna be not the best use of everyone's time, since you won't have the material in front of you to look at, for me anyway. So I'm assuming we'll come back to that, some additional comments back at another meeting, as we did last year.
We will. Is there one particular or 2 particular changes that you want? Are you doing it as in totality, and that's the way you want to do it?
Well, what I had prepared, just to recall everybody's attention to that, I had done as I think you had asked, specified the page it was on, the section it was on, the language and that information. So without everybody having it, it's probably gonna be better for me just to hold off on some of this, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sir.
It's your prerogative. That's fine. Okay. The next, Squire Blackburn.
Yes, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, when Squire Sebastian talked about her 13 pages, and when we were working on that process last year, I went through her 13 pages, and everything that I had even thoughts on were covered in her pages. So I thought, that we would have that here tonight, but so I don't have it in front of me either. But so I don't have anything specific.
Okay. Next is Squire Muller. Need to unmute, Squire Muller. Squire Muller, you need to unmute.
Alright, there we go. For some reason my mute button disappeared. Sorry about that. I would like to circle back on the admin code as far as enforcement.
Okay.
I'm on the road in this town all day long, and I am just amazed by the amount of trucks that don't have signage on them, that I talk to Lee a lot, don't have business licenses. I just think it's getting worse and worse, and it's not just people in my industry, it's excavators, it's roofers, I've talked to the Chamber of Commerce a lot. A lot of people are still, being dishonest and taking advantage of older people and fly-by-nights, and they come and get money from them and never show back up. So I would like to discuss a little bit about enforcement.
Okay.
I know we talked about it last time, and Squire Moore might have something to add to it, because I know he was vocal when we talked about it last. I just want to kind of throw that out to everybody.
All right, let's talk about it.
Well, wait, Judge, just to remind y'all, just so everybody's not totally confused about what the issue in the administrative code is, that's not part of the administrative code.
Okay.
That deals with licensing, occupational tax, etc. That's a different topic. I think it's an important topic, and I'm not in any way minimizing it, but that's not part of the administrative code.
Okay. Would you like that to be on an agenda, Squire Muller, at some point in time?
Yes, I would, Judge, thank you.
Okay? We'll most certainly have that on the agenda for discussion. Okay, Squire Tracy,
Judge, I don't have anything at this time.
okay? Squire Booth,
I wanted to tell Squire Sebastian, the first year I was, when I was first elected, and in my first year, I had an administrative code document that was, well, I don't know, 13, but it was either 13 or more. So I understand, and I believe that the Counselor Sparks, was very upset that I did that, because usually the administrative code is set in stone and we follow that, so.
Oh, no, Squire Booth, that was not my concern. My concern during that period is because I had to read the whole dang thing line by line. That was, no, ma'am, I appreciate any comments or any assistance you want to provide. It was the fact that I had to read the whole thing out loud for everybody. That was a bit gruesome.
That was a problem, I agree.
Any comment y'all want, I'll be glad to take it. It's really more of an HR thing, so I'll kick it back on that end. I'm distracted. But no, just please don't make me read it again out loud.
No, I will not make you do that again.
Thank you.
By the way, I am appearing in my office in New York, in case you're wondering about my background. I flew up there yesterday. Okay. No, I have no changes that I would like to see in the administrative code.
okay? Okay, Squire Moore,
Yes, the only thing I have is what I had before on the starting salaries, and we're not getting any raises this year, so it's probably not a issue this year. And I don't know where we finished it with that.
Betty
So-
Jo, are you on the line, Betty Jo?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, can you update us where we left off on the salaries when it came to the
The bottom line, when raise is given across the board, I was saying that starting salary should not be raised every time. We should address that every other year or so.
Where we left off, I have those documents in front of me. The Jerry's actually 13 pages, and the other two that we actually didn't finish. And Squire Moore's right. We had it left. There was no vote on that yet. We actually, the notes I had, we was waiting on the CAECO survey to come through. And the CAECO survey came through, and by looking at it, it's not going to help us very much, because they have 6 to 10 job titles and 1 classification. So it's going to be very hard to use that for an example. Secondly, I was asked to contact other counties about what they do. Most counties that I contacted, they do use the CPI to adjust the comp plan, and so does the city each year. So that's the information that I have received from the other counties. And I did have the comment from Moore on, he would like to see every other year adjust the comp plan. So that's where we have on that. There was an issue with that at the road department, and we have corrected that. The new employee coming in at the starting rate if someone's been there 6 months. Because now a new employee has to wait 6 months in order to receive the CPI adjustment. So what I have basically, if the court wants to vote on it, Squire Moore's request of every other year doing the CPI on the comp plan, or to do it every year. That's what I have currently on the notes from last year.
Squire Moore,
Okay, yeah, I don't think we'd be able to vote on it today. We would need to get that information to everyone.
Now, Squire Moore, were you addressing the issue at the road department as the reason
Well,
to change it?
it happened at the road department and it happened at the fire department, I do believe. We had to go back and make adjustments to 3 and 5 year employees because starting employees were making the same thing they were making. So, you take away the road scholars, which they're probably not even offering right now, and some of the training at the fire department is probably more of an issue now than it was a year ago.
Furthermore, the fire department is not on our comp plan. They have a separate comp plan.
Okay,
Okay, so they're not on the comp plan that we have under the judge's
right,
office.
okay. Well,
Okay,
we've had to adjust the salaries at the road department a couple of times because of starting employees making about the same as a 3, 5, 6 year employee.
Okay, I'm fine with moving it to every other year, if that's what you would, is that what you're requesting, Squire Moore?
Yes.
Betty, do you think that would work?
it would work. My only concern is, we're not gonna stay up with the surrounding county salaries. I'm afraid we're gonna fall behind like we did previously because we never had a comp plan. It's up to the court if they wanna do it every other year. It would work, at least it would be every other year.
Well,
That's
and
my-
I think I said we need to, every 2 or 3 years, look at it and see what kind of adjustment it needed. I
That's
don't wanna
correct.
rewrite the wheel, reinvent the wheel here, but I just think something needs to be done.
Squire Booth, you had a question?
You're muted, Squire Booth.
Thank you. Moore corrected, what, I had the impression that that's not what he wanted, and he explained what he wanted, so my, comment is moot now.
Okay. Any other questions? Rick, how would you propose? Would you propose that this looks like the only, one item that has been presented? Could we have you draft a change in the ordinance on that and have it for, first reading on the 16th?
We're gonna do it.
You're breaking up on me, Judge. What'd you say? I apologize.
We're not gonna do a first reading, second reading to amend the admin code. We're gonna do it within the codification process because the codification process will take 2 readings.
Okay. So Tamara just corrected me that we're gonna present it as part of the codification, document,
If there are changes to be.
if there are changes to be made, so.
Now, remember, and to follow up on that, when you're doing the codification, you're gonna be repealing and reestablishing a large portion of the county ordinances in a different format. So this goes back to what Squire Muller was talking about as well, on the occupational tax issues, things like that. If those need to be changed, as opposed to piecemealing it, doing it, and we built in provisions with our codifiers to be able to do it as new things come across. But everything that we can get on the ground floor on the first round to change, amend, or update, you all ought to seriously consider doing that because that's gonna require 2 readings. You're gonna repeal, you're gonna reenact all at one time to address all those things at one time. So you've got some chances to do it, but I certainly would concur. I wouldn't piecemeal it and do one set of ordinances here, one set of ordinances there, et cetera, because it's all gonna be part of one large law, book of law.
So, Mr. Sparks, based on what Squire Sebastian had presented, a year ago, the 13 pages, I remember that there were a lot of changes in nouns to pronouns, or the pronouns being changed to gender specific and all of that. Will those be looked at through the codification? Instead of us having to go back and changing a he to they, or those type of things?
You ought to consider substantive changes, and there were tweaks. There were some other more substantial changes that would modify the stuff. But for the most part, I went back last year as we went through it and tried to update those linguistic changes that did not necessarily result in a substantive change, but clarification changes. And a lot of what Squire Sebastian did, rightfully so, having a new set of eyes to look at it, streamlined some of the language. The other stuff is still being processed because we're updating things like work comp. There's one example that you need. I'll just tell you, I don't know, I'll follow on Jeff's statement. We have voting leave. Well, if you're doing voting by virtue of absentee ballots, is that something that the court should, and the court should, that was rhetorical. It's not something that you ought to think about doing. You got to take a look at it, because the necessity of appearing and voting may no longer be required if everybody's voting absentee. Some things about the drug-free workplace, with different things being brought into the market, different things that are happening. Those need to be addressed as changes occur. And you're always going to be reacting, and Sherry's nodding her head like I do, because those are things we've talked about before, waiting for things to catch up. We're just not catching up yet. The big one that jumped out to me in this one, or for this year, was frankly voting leave with absentee ballots. That was absolutely phenomenal what the Commonwealth of Kentucky did in terms of getting the vote out this last round. But it changes kind of that old idea of how you do things, and you've got a great opportunity, that is the court. Y'all have a great opportunity to get on the front end of stuff as opposed to the back end of stuff. So be thinking about that. And Jerry, if you want, here in the next couple, I've got that in my folder with those changes. I'd be glad to sit down with you. We can Zoom it, Skype it, call it in, whatever, and just go through those again and just hammer them down and make those changes to submit for a copy.
And just to piggyback on that, Judge, when you had asked me to have a separate meeting with Rick, he and I had really worked to categorize the changes that I had in 3 different areas, like substantive.
Yeah.
When I went back and looked at KRS statutes, some of them were no longer even statutes that we're noting in our administrative code. So it cleaned up some of that stuff. It cleaned up some language, but there were there were quite a few substantive things. So Rick and I sat down and really broke it down into 3 categories and brought it back to the court. So maybe it's time to, again, Rick and I can do that and be happy to put this back to the court after he and I talked about that, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
So that it takes a large portion of this away from everybody looking at it.
Well, I all I'm trying to do is kind of make sure that we move expeditiously and don't take 5 hours on one item and still we can't get through that. So as long as we can move forward as fast as possible.
We met after those meetings and really separated a lot of wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and moved forward on it. You all have reviewed it. That discharges your obligations under the code to review it annually. It can be modified upon vote, etc. I think it's right to come back and revisit those and just boil it down a little further, distill it down a little bit further, and get you something where you could move on. But the 2 issues, those are the 2 that I just wanted to ask to consider. Nobody brought those up, so.
Okay. So if Squire Sebastian and Mr. Sparks, if you all can meet again, and if you're ready on the 16th, we'll have it on there. If not, we'll bring it in at our next meeting after that. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I don't see that. That's the 16th,
Sounds good.
okay, that's optimistic, I appreciate the optimism.
I'm just throwing that out. Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. Hey, Rick, this is a question for you. We talked a lot about classifications, like within the road department and the fire department. Is that under the admin code or is that under the other?
I missed probably the crucial question. I didn't get the reference. You said fire department, but I didn't hear the rest of it, Squire.
We had talked about, right now, this job classifications, we had talked about adding subcategories for different job positions. Would that be included in the admin code or not?
Chief, if you're around, firemen are
Or John Mitchell, the road department was in that conversation also.
I think Betty Jo could answer some of that too. Betty Jo?
Yeah, I'd have to I'll make a pass on that one to the chief and Betty Jo.
Okay,
This is Betty Jo. The fire department has their own separate comp plan. They don't adopt the compensation plan. The road department is part of the compensation plan. We did talk about the subcategories. We have not met on the subcategories. I believe there's gonna be a comp meeting in the near future to discuss, all of the positions under the comp plan. And the only one that's not is the fire department and of course the elected officials.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, looks like we've gone through all the magistrates. We've got a plan to move forward, and we'll move forward and after with Squire Sebastian's, and that takes care of Squire Blackburn's and Squire Muller. We have another avenue for you, and looks like everybody's been addressed. With that being said, thank you, and we'll move on from there. Let's call the roll and get this party going, would you please?
No, we're in the work session, we're on call roll.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
It's okay.
That was the next one, sorry.
It's been a long week and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, we're having a party here. There's so much fun. All right. Okay, the next item is authorization for approval of minutes from our public hearing on June the 9th, 2020. Any questions on that? Next item is authorization approval of minutes from our special meeting of June 19th, 2020. No questions on that. Okay, the authorization to approve the county clerk's payment of election expenses not to exceed $25,000. Mr. Clerk, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
You want to turn the camera on?
Yes, sir. Sorry. Make everybody dizzy again. Sorry about that.
Judge, and you know, this whole election cycle, and I think you all understand it's been a whirlwind. The $25,000 will cover the election officers, which is generally the court's cost that they pay for election officers overall. This will also pay for the Board of Elections. The total cost is, I've got it in here, it's $21,000. We sent the bill over, $21,250. We wrote it for $25,000 because I've paid some of the employees that were part-time out of our money, being out of our salary money from the clerk's office. I've also got a $7,680 check from the State Board of Elections that I gave to Susan, that I submitted to Susan for election clause, that goes toward the labor of the people, or the election workers, that was meant and entitled for us after actually having to stuff these ballots. The other cost that is involved with this that we've never had before, and I think Ann Northcutt may have an idea on this, but we have a bill for $17,751 that is the mailing cost. We've never had to pay to mail that many ballots before. We mailed out, like I said, right under 16,000. So we were able to use the state mail house, and I must say, without the state mail house, we probably wouldn't have been able to pull this off either. We were able to take them 2,000 and 4,000 ballots at a time, so they did a really nice job. They placed all the postage on them and got them all delivered in a timely manner for us. So the cost of the 17,000, I would think, to me, that would be COVID related. We didn't ask to have to mail these ballots. We didn't choose that as an option on how to mail these. So I would like for Ann to submit the 17,000, you all have the bill, because we've submitted it over to you. But the 17,751.91, I would like to see that submitted over to the COVID. The 20, and if you add everything up on your all's cost on this side, the 25,000 and 17,751, you have a total of 42,751, and that's if COVID money does not pay for the mailing. Will you subtract out the 7,680, and you're still at 35,000, which is less than what you spent on the previous primaries. So we were still able to pull this off with a 30-day election cycle, with mailing ballots in the whole 9 yards at a reduced rate to you guys, to the fiscal court. Every time I thought about what we were doing, how we were moving forward, I always looked up to say, what's the most cost-effective way for you all, for us to get through this? Because I'm aware of that. When you're all paying the bill and I'm the one overseeing what's happening, I'm aware of that. So I took everything we could to make sure that this was an affordable way to have this election.
And Jeff, thank you. Do you foresee, though, any monies coming down either from the state or from the federal government to cover the extra expense in mail-in voting?
Well, the state supplied all of the envelopes, and all the return postage was paid by the state.
I'm just thinking more money than
I don't think you're gonna see, that they have money. The State Board of Elections has, they spent quite a bit of money on this election, but they also just picked up a grant that I think is not gonna play into this cycle. I think it'll play into next cycle for equipment. I think that I'm not gonna say we waited out the State Board of Elections long enough, but I think we've waited in the process long enough, used the equipment that we've had. And if we'll all sit down and have a real common sense conversation about what a new election cycle looks like once we get some direction. How many precincts are truly needed in Franklin County? How do we do it? How do we make sure everybody can get through? How many people can we vote in one location? How can we do it through multiple locations for precincts and for magisterial districts? I think we sit down, we talk about that, we talk about, I think that $700,000 that we've been throwing around for new election equipment, I think will greatly not only reduce that, but I think we'll find state funding to pay for all that equipment. I truly do.
that sounds like a winner to me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
But these bills, the 17,000, I would like for Ann to submit, and then the 25,000 is the labor bill for the actual precinct workers, which we were able to pull off from June the 1st through June the 29th through today, paying the election officers. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Ann, you want to comment about Jeff's request for you? I guess you all talked, right, about the using.
Yes, we spoke briefly about that. Initially, someone had asked DLG about election expenses, and I think at that time they knew that there were going to be some monies from the Board of Election coming down to local governments to help pay for some unforeseen expenses. So at that time they were saying don't include election expenses in your CRF reimbursement request. However, now that we have a better picture of it, I'm glad to send them another query and ask them if we can consider that an eligible expense.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, all right. Any questions okay, I see. Let's go. Squire Muller, I think I saw your hand up first.
Thank you, Judge. Hey, Jeff, thanks again for being fiscally responsible and everything. Could you just share with everybody, I believe you said the cost of this primary was less than the previous ones, and you said it's basically $35,000 this year. Could you share with everybody what a typical primary would cost the county?
Generally, it's around 40,000, depending on the precinct workers. With a smaller turnout, when it's expected as a smaller turnout, sometimes we'll get down in the 34 or 35,000, but generally it's around 40,000 per election cycle. So it's 40 for the primary, and then usually around 42 for the general.
Perfect. Thanks again, Jeff, for all your work and all your team.
Thank you.
Squire Sebastian?
Just one quick question, and thank you, Judge. Mr. Clark, the letter that we got, it says something in it about not to exceed 20K. Do we need to change some language in that, or in order to make sure that we cover this, request you're gonna have to pay for the election officers?
Squire Sebastian, once again, this was a working document. It was a working document, and I apologize.
Right.
It was under 20,000, and then it went to 22 when we added the state or the county board of elections in. So that was not on the judge or Tambra's fault. That was just because we were trying to do everything and make sure we got in front of you to get these election officers. They worked really hard for a month, and I want them paid as quick as possible.
And so,
Absolutely, I completely understand that, and please understand I was making no statement against anyone here. All I wanted to know is do we need to change this so that it is cogent with what we're about to do? That's the only question I have.
so I can answer that.
And I think the letter can be changed retroactively because we're talking about it now. I don't think that's a hold up in any way. Just asking a procedural question. That's it.
So earlier today, I sent you all a couple of text messages. You all received a couple of emails. Did you all receive those? Okay, so everybody else did. So in the emails I sent and the text messages, the reason I sent the text was just to give you all a heads up that some amended documents had come through. So Jeff had prepared an amended letter so that it includes $25,000. So that was emailed out to you all.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions for Mr. Hancock? Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item is authorization to approve the 2021 budget for the Capital Community Economic Industrial Development Authority, DBA Kentucky Capital Development Corporation. Mr. Horn, are you on the?
Here I'm the treasurer for PCDC.
Yeah, we got you, Zach. Thank you. Welcome. Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You should have you're cutting out just a little bit. I'm sorry.
So are you, Zach. You're cutting out a little bit too.
All right. You all should have the proposed budget for KCDC in your stuff, in your packet. It looks a lot like it did last year. The one difference being that we have a $15,000 difference, $15,000 less this year. And as you can see, we don't have a lot of discretion in our budget. So the majority of that $15,000 has come out of our marketing expenses, which was reduced from $12,000 to $5,322. Last year, our operating budget was $230,200. This year, for the proposed budget, is $216,000.
Questions by any of the magistrates? Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. Hey, Zach, how are you doing today? Question.
Pretty good.
I'm still new at this whole thing in the KCDC. It was my understanding, I think, when KCDC was set up, that it was going to be funded by a third by the city, a third by the county, and a third by industry. Are you all receiving any money from the industry portions?
No, we received no money from the industry, and I think initially when it was first set up, there was some partnership that had occurred, and they were getting some money. But I think when the occupational tax kind of got designated to KCDC, we stopped receiving funds from outside sources. So for many years now, we've been pretty much entirely funded by the state county.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Squire Tracy.
Hey, Zach, thank you for being here. Quick question. I noticed in your salaries line item, is the employee that we read about being laid off, has that employee been brought back to work, a part-time employee?
We are attempting to bring back, and I think we have at this point brought one person that was working part-time back to help out. And, there's quite a bit that needs to be done. I know that, like the bookkeeping stuff, that she typically handles that. I think she has been brought back on a limited basis at this point.
Okay, thank you.
But her hours have.
Squire Sebastian.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Zach.
I'm sorry.
Zach, could you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Zach, we're not hearing you. Can you repeat your last statement?
Well, I said she has been back, but I think her hours may have been reduced somewhat, but she is back, I believe, working, so.
Okay, thank you.
Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. Zach, thank you so much for joining us today. I just have a quick question. I want to piggyback on Squire Tracy's question there. Was there a rationale, since the budget that you have in place goes through June 30th, and the discussions that we had did not impact the current budget in place? Was there a rationale as to why KCDC chose to lay off this staff person? Because the budget that we were talking about shouldn't have impacted that person at all, since it was for next year. Just asking them. Thank you.
It's my understanding that it's a combination of things, but like I said, I think this person has been brought back at this point. But there was some concern that we would be cut $30,000 rather than 15, that the city would also reduce. That we would also get reduced, and if that were the case, we would have a significant shortfall in our budget. But we had two part-time
for next year.
We had two part-time people, and one of them had been let go. We have brought one of them back. So I'm sorry, I need to clarify that. We had two part-time people.
Okay, but
one of them has
my
been back,
point was
so
is
one part-time person.
okay.
And it is, but the rationale was there was less work to be done because of due to social distancing and lockdown, and B, there was concern that we would have a $30,000 reduction in the budget rather than just 15.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure, since you had money since KCDC had the money in the budget for the staffing for the current year, which they would have been laid off in, that choice was made. Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate you clearing that up for us.
Squire Booth.
Oh.
Unmute Squire Booth.
Okay. I heard thought I heard Zach say something about state having to depend on the state. They do not make any contribution to KCDC's budget, is that right?
I misspoke, Marty. It's the city and county.
Yes.
Occupational tax.
That's what you have on your budget.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe it was not complete. I apologize. Okay.
Any other questions? Squire Sebastian.
Just one quick one. Thank you, Judge. Zach, how are you guys handling your meetings right now? Are you continuing to meet every month, and are you doing it via Zoom? I know I had been a regular participant in your meetings just to attend. Then I had some things going on in my family, so I missed a few meetings. So I wanted to touch base and see how your meetings are going now, and see if there's an opportunity again for outside individuals to participate in the meetings. Thank you.
It's a combination of Zoom and in person right now, and they're streamed on Facebook, so you can view it that way. I'm continuing to attend via Zoom because I'm still social distancing, because COVID's worse now than it was in March.
Yes, sir.
So I'm continuing to social distance, but we do stream it on Facebook and stuff like that, so the public can view it, participate. But it is a combination of in person and Zoom at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Zach concerning the budget for KCDC? All right, Zach, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here tonight as a representative of the board. Thank you for serving on the board.
Thank you.
I'm saddened by the fact that we cut economic development, which is huge for growing our workforce base in our community by 15,000. The city thankfully restored and kept the same amount in. I wish that had been the case for us, but it isn't. So thank you for doing the best you can under the circumstances. We appreciate all the work that you all do. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is second reading and approval of an ordinance amending ordinance number 8, 1987, relating to the zoning ordinance in Franklin County for 85.388 acre portion of property identified as portion tract number 1, 84.058 acres, plus or minus a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.00 and a portion of tract number 2, 1.331 acres, plus or minus a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.01, located at 690 Duncan Road, from Agricultural District AG to Industrial General District IG. This is the second reading of this ordinance. Is Mr. Sparks, is there a clarification on what can or cannot be said at this time?
Well, not really. Heard by way of a lot of information, voluminous information, a public hearing, a transcript. The court's faced with the decision to give us a second reading, voted up or down. You heard and established proposed findings of fact as a result of your public hearing. If the court entertains a second vote in the zone change, in the May 3. If the court does not, then taken in the resolution in the alternative, which would deny the zone change. This is what you've been working on, everybody, for these couple of months, weeks, and after that hearing, it's time for a vote. You can certainly make your statements and the deliberation as you need, like it before the court. Robert may have something to add to it, but it's properly presented before the court to decide.
Okay. Robert says he doesn't have anything to add to it. Squire Sebastian?
Yeah, just one, Judge. Counselor Sparks, I just wanted to, are we still bound by KRS, whatever it was? Let me see if I can find it. 100.231. Is that still the guiding principle? Just trying to make sure.
Yes, ma'am. And that states, and I think I submitted it, had it a couple times, but in 3 circumstances, if you make findings that it's appropriate, not other conditions exist under that standard, it's KRS under 213, and the court heard a lot of testimony, some of it more and others, but less about the zoning, and remember that's the issue, the zoning, not land use, etc. And took a lot of testimony, this body, as well as the transcript which you ordered as to the bring main conditions, etc. And got the opportunity to the decision. But yes, ma'am. Kara, 103 is a modification of zone.
All right. Let's start, as you can understand, the second reading is to approve the, zone change. And if that doesn't pass, then we go back and we go for the resolution portion. And so let's start with the second reading, approval of the zone change from AG to Industrial General District. Is there any discussion on that part? Now, Mr. Sparks, are we gonna vote on it here, or are we just gonna discuss it, which way to go with it? Rick?
I'm assuming we'll vote after we start our regular meeting.
Yeah, so we're just gonna discuss that we're just gonna say right now that these are the two ways to go about this process. Is that okay, Mr. Sparks?
Lost them.
Okay,
Oh, the answer is yes, sir. You'll have to wait till the voting session.
okay. Does anybody want to make any comments on the second reading and approval of the ordinance amending number 8?
Judge,
Squire Moore?
I will.
Okay.
Earlier today in our road committee meeting, I asked Robert Hewitt about a situation that happened several months ago out there in the entrance of Industrial 3. I had talked to him then about finding another way in and out of Industrial 3 because ambulances couldn't get in or out for a couple of hours, and it could have been a lot longer than that had circumstances been different. And he has found a way, but it's going to be very costly. I know that's not really pertinent here, but in testimony during our hearing, the applicant's lawyer said that he was going to build a road into Industrial 3. He's acquired property for that, and that's going to be a big help to that part of the county, if the whole park there, if this does pass. And it was brought up in our one of our meetings about unsightly industrial buildings out there. Those are already there, and there was also testimonies that they would put up a buffer zone along the road and between the neighboring houses too, of 3 rows of pine type trees. So just want to put that out there.
Okay, Squire? Robert, I'm going to piggyback on what Squire Moore just said, because unfortunately it was about midnight when I believe I was the one that asked you the question, or it may have been somebody else that asked the question, define what buffering would be and what it would look like in this situation. Will you mind, since you already testified to that, to go over that briefly again? You want it on camera? No, you want it on there? Okay.
So, upon asking that question, I cited directly from the county zoning ordinance, in which stated that a triple row of evergreen trees spaced at 15 feet on center, 6 feet in height at the time of planting is required whenever the industrial abuts a residential property. There was also testimony provided by the applicant's attorney that they would agree to provide additional landscaping to address the concerns of overall aesthetics and site views from the adjoining properties.
Okay. And so when you say adjoining, if you drive down Duncan Road, there are no houses on one side of it. There are 2 houses in Woodford County that are on the south end of it, I guess you might say. But there are no houses that are actually along that property line, but they're across the street. That still counts as abuts residential then, right?
Generally, no, it does not. Oftentimes, buffering is provided along the front as a visual screen from a parking area. That's usually how a site lays out, based on the concept plan that was revised and submitted at the hearing. It appears as though the building would face inwards on the property towards the new road that was shown that connects Industrial Park 3 to Duncan Road. So I believe that there is opportunity for negotiation with the developer for improved site design based on the testimony at the hearing. And I believe that I could be successful in providing additional screening. Now, it's a large tract of land, we're talking 85 plus acres. So it would be part of the development plan process in which those negotiations would occur.
But it would for sure occur, even though the developer said they would be amenable to put in the buffering and even more buffering if needed as well.
Yes.
But it would absolutely be part of the south end, and I'll use the resident's name, the Goddard's property, because that adjoins that area. Is that correct?
What's interesting about this property, as we all know, is that it as shown in the images from my report, a portion of Mr. Tierney's property is in Woodford County, and that has a different zoning classification. So once again, I believe it's part of the development plan negotiation process, how the overall site lays out, whether it's perimeter landscaping, parking lot landscaping, required street trees. So without a solid plan, I can't answer specifically. There are a lot of variables involved.
But there would be buffering in any of those situations.
Yes, there are. Landscape buffering is required.
There was also testimony about drainage, a very big concern about drainage in the slickway. Can you, elaborate on what would happen for drainage in the retention areas?
On-site stormwater detention is required by the county regulations. At the hearing, the applicant's amended concept plan did show what I recall as 5 basin locations. I think they were shown in yellow. So in their testimony, they indicated that they believe that they can improve the situation. And then there was, I believe I gave testimony stating that I had a conversation with the developer in which I had stated clearly that we were going to ask them to go above and beyond our current standards, which there's language in the regulation that can allow me to require that. So Squire Moore stated also during that hearing that in his opinion that development on the property could improve the drainage because we would then detain it and release it at a controlled rate. So there's a lot of considerations for stormwater because the applicant and the court and the community know that this property is at the headwaters of Slickway Branch and the issues that we're having downstream.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Squire Blackman.
Yes, sir. I was under the assumption there's no new testimony tonight. But anyway, Robert, when somebody does request a zone change, did you send notifications to all the adjoining property owners?
Yes.
Did you send the ones across the street as well?
Yes.
So they are adjoining?
Per the requirement for notification. Yes, they are.
So there's different requirements for notification than there are considerations in adjoining per se industrial property zoning.
Well,
Just
it's a difference
clarify.
between adjoining and adjacent.
Okay, so adjacent, you notify everybody, adjoining is a different, definition.
No, sir, it's not what I said. I just said there's a difference between the two terms.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Anyone else on this part of the ordinance? Mr. Hewitt, thank you. Appreciate you coming up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the next one is authorization to approve a resolution denying the zoning of property located at 690 Duncan Road, identified as portion of tract number 184.058 acres plus or minus a portion of PVA map number 087-00-000-031.00 and a portion of tract number 2, 1.331 acres plus or minus a portion of PVA map number 087-00-031.01 from agricultural AG to industrial general district IG. Any questions or comments on this part of the rezone? Squire Moore?
Yes, Judge. I just want to say that to deny this would be a big hit to the county, I think. Outside of the magistrate of this district, I cannot understand voting no on this from any other magistrates myself, but you know, we say we want development in Franklin County. To deny this would say no, we don't want development. We want to suppress development. We want our kids to go somewhere else to live and to work. We want to push that development to Scott County, Shelby County, Anderson County, even Owen County, wherever, but we don't want it here. That's all, Judge.
Squire Blackburn?
Respectfully, Squire Moore, I completely and utterly disagree with that statement. It doesn't say we don't want development here. It says we want development that is planned, well planned, with more than 28% of the policies and goals lined out in our comprehensive plan that directly apply to our growth. It's saying we're not going to take 100 acres and just develop 15 of it and let the other part set. It's poor land use. I think we've got better ideas that we can go with instead of just gobbling up agricultural land as it seems available.
Squire Moore?
Yes, no one ever said that the 82 acres of green space wouldn't be cut for hay or some other agricultural use. And I disagree with you on that, Squire Blackburn, but I just think that it to say that the land use map was an afterthought and shouldn't be included in development is asinine in my thinking, and that statement's been made. So the land use map does include this to be industrial, and it does include it to be developed into the industrial park.
Okay. Any, Squire Blackburn?
Overlooking the land use map, it is a supporting document. The comprehensive plan has 7 goals and 32 policies. They drive everything. They drive our development. They drive how we do it, why we do it. And it was put together by the citizens in our community. To pick and choose what we use out of it, it's short-sighted. I want my kids to grow up. I want my kids to have places to work in this town. I don't want to send them out. I ran on having good development, good planning. We're talking about zoning. The planning is out of our hands. It's the zoning. And it's I laid it out. I felt pretty well on every single policy at the last meeting. And I understand jobs. I understand short-term jobs. I know the warehouse that's there that was just built is being leased out for warehouse space as we speak. And I'm not an expert on warehousing jobs, but those aren't going to be the jobs that keep 4.0 presidents of their classes in our city and our town. I want to think bigger, and I believe this is short-sighted, and that's all I've got. I really don't want to discuss it anymore. I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
Well, I would say that those goals, most developments don't meet every goal. You're to meet certain goals within that development plan, and this is in agreement with the comprehensive plan. And
less than a third of it.
I don't think so. Anyway. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on these issues? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the next item. The next item is authorization to approve board appointments. And the first one is the Franklin County Tourist and Convention Commission. The tourism board has sent us the name of Dan Liebman, who runs Steck's Barbecue, and replacing Sonia Sanders as a member of the Restaurant Association. The next person is Melissa Parker, the manager of the Hampton Inn, replacing Gary Burke, as a member of the Hotel Motel Associations. The Tourism Commission sends those names in and asks us to vote these people in to affirm their work on the the Tourism Commission. These are both great candidates on that. Discussion on any of those? Squire Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you, Judge. I did look up the ordinance that created this board that we're talking about, and it specifies, I think, that the commission's supposed to have 7 members, and one of those that we're talking about now is to be from a list, and I think it says something like not less than 2 names submitted by the County Hotel Motel Association. So I'm assuming that's Ms. Parker, the way I understand it. And in looking at her application, and I realized we need diversity of perspective on this board, and having 2 representatives from the same hospitality company, one of them who reports to a person that's already on this board, I think in my mind demonstrates a lack of that diversity of perspective, because there's other groups in town that may have perspective that we need, Airbnbs, B&Bs, etc. So I'm just sharing that as a concern after looking at the ordinance that created the Tourism Commission. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is Tax Assessment Appeals Board. Randolph Smith is a gentleman who presented an application, said he'd like to be placed on a board. Squire Muller asked that we advertise. He has some background in real estate, and he will be replacing Don Jeffers this year. It looks like to the end of this year. Squire Muller.
Hey, Judge, thank you, and thank you for advertising and things like that. I have a question. Is there somewhere where we can find like a master list of appointments and
Sure.
When things are up and things
Sure.
like that?
Terry, have you seen?
Yes, it's on the website.
Okay, it is? It has all the board appointments? Okay. Thank you.
After each court meeting, it is updated, so you'll see the beginning and ending term.
Okay, thank you very much.
Squire Sebastian.
One thing that's not updated, unfortunately, on there is it appears that the court received a letter from Mr. Jeffers back in May. And did any of the other magistrates, were they aware that this vacancy was available? Because Mr. Jeffers, under this court, had been appointed to a term. So that may be something that we consider looking at, is, you know, informing everyone when somebody has submitted a letter that says, unfortunately, due to whatever circumstances, I resign my position, just so that we're all aware. Just sharing that perspective as well. Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Next item is authorization to approve budget transfers. Miss Susan.
Good evening, Court, Judge.
Hello.
This is part of our annual closeout process to bring our budgeted lines in line with what we have obligated by necessity. There's a list you should have received, and a corrected list this afternoon with a couple of additions. The Planning Commission contribution is shared with the city, and those bills came in late, but we do have that number now, and we do need additional funds in that line item. And then we had a late event on the household hazardous waste, and we had that number, so we've accounted for that as well in this amended budget transfer list. Otherwise, all the other line items were the same as what was distributed in the packet. I did not provide a detailed explanation for each line, so I'd be happy to take questions if you have any specific concerns about what's included.
Squire Booth. Squire Booth.
I wondered, there is a grant that our county receives for things like the hazardous waste disposal. And I thought that would cover, I didn't know, well, I just wondered why that required a budget transfer.
That is an excellent question, and yes, the grants do cover the cost of the events, but if I don't have the amount to put in the expense line item at the time the budget was built, then that expense line item does not reflect the cost of the grant. A lot of the grants, and I think the household hazardous waste, as well as there was a recycling grant that were both awarded like in June of 2019, and so it was very last minute, and it was after the budget process was completed for the 1920 budget and wasn't incorporated onto the expense lines. And then, you know, typically as we receive those funds, they might be amended in, but those are both advance money that we receive on the front end, and oftentimes that there's just a disconnect in the communication of how much would be spent. So yes, the grant did cover the event. It's just that the expenditure line item does not, which has to be separate from the receipt line item, did not reflect the total of the grant at the time of budgeting.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions for budget transfer? Squire Sebastian.
Yeah, just real quick, thank you, Judge. Madam Treasurer, just in looking at the corrected document that was sent earlier today, the planning, I just have a question about three things. The Planning Commission contribution, so we split that, and I think the Planning Commission actually takes in funds. Did they not have enough funds within their budgetary line item that I think is managed by the city to cover their activities, or really how does that work? I just want to make sure I understand this.
Robert will take that question. If he's still on.
Yeah, he's coming.
The city.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Robert, I'm sorry.
The city and county have always split the cost down the middle for board member reimbursements, legal fees, insurance, audit reports. The revenues that the planning commission receives, which also includes fees to the board of zoning adjustments, is used for other expenditures, whether it be hiring consultants for special studies, purchasing plaques for members who have served on the board, things of that nature. So, they don't have a very large account and not near enough to handle the expenses that they distribute out to the city and the county. And I do provide the treasurer with a copy of the audit report every year. It's just, it's how it was set up, and that's how we've always done it.
I do believe there is some additional cost for a lawsuit, though. Am I right, Robert?
Yes, that was quite high this year. You are correct. Much more so than last year's.
Yeah.
Squire Sebastian, you have any another question?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate the thorough response, because sometimes, not knowing about lawsuits and things like that impacts, unfortunately, the county's budget, so it is important, and I don't know if it's a matter of principle of how this was directed to work, or if this is somewhere written in an ordinance as to how this works, but certainly I would like to ensure that we revisit how the revenues come in to ensure that they are making the effort to, and I would trust the case, that they are making the effort to pay their way as best they can for expenses, because there are quite a few staff expenses above and beyond what an expert witness or an expert in a particular field would be. So I'll just put that one to bed. Susan, there were a couple of other expenses on here in regard to the ambulance service and Humane Society. Could you tell us just a little bit about those, what those additional expenses were, and thank you in advance?
Well, I'll just make another comment about the Planning Commission contributions. They do, I believe, have a schedule of fees that Robert has shared and that we see, and that one, like our own schedule of fees, may need to be updated. So there's a little follow-up there, so there's opportunity possibly to help cover services. The Humane Society, we have a contract with them, and it's based on an initial amount, then plus whatever the CPI is at a certain point in time. But there was a special case, again, I believe it was a legal obligation, and our county attorney was probably very familiar with that. So based on that legal obligation, the Humane Society takes on the responsibility for housing, I guess, during the litigation, and we cover that cost through the contract, through additional costs. The ambulance service is again a interlocal agreement contract with the city, and it's not always a flat determined amount. We don't determine how much we're going to dedicate towards ambulance. It's based on, again, some sort of negative formula of deficit funding that we share in. So that one is, again, just a little unpredictable. I made that slight adjustment there. Was there another one, Squire, or did we answer the question on the solid waste grants?
No, I'll have a question when we get to another tab on that, but thank you, that has just cleared up some of the information behind this. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next item is the treasurer's report.
You should have received a copy of a revenue report and an expense report with your packets. I don't believe you have a summary sheet for that point in time, but I can say to you again, as I've been preparing you for this black and white news, that we will end the current year in the black, probably about $1.4 million. We still have some additional things to book for payroll and benefits, but nevertheless, we will end the year in the black. There are a couple significant issues of why we have such a positive balance. for the year end. And the simple answer is, it's based on events that didn't occur. Number one, the Farmdale sanitation project did not progress as planned during this year. Number 1A and 1B is we didn't do the paving projects through the road department. Those are two very high dollar amounts that basically are reduce our expenditures and do not have, we're going to require county funds. Another large issue is the fire truck that was wrecked. That we had insurance proceeds for repairing that, but the repair was not completed due to delays from the disaster. And I think that the road department even had a delay in some of their equipment delivery based on the same reason. So, and then of course we have had a spending freeze for, through all the funds. So some expenditures and projects have been put off or canceled as a result of that. So there are multiple issues. So typically, we're a dynamic institution, so this doesn't just end today. It's Happy New Year tomorrow. This is New Year's Eve party tonight, but yes, we do start a new fiscal year tomorrow, point blank. So whatever, we final postings, we will have this in the black. However, that money will be in reserve. It will, be in our fund balance and available to fiscal court as those projects come back come back online and we can make in the form of require budget adjustments. In particular, like I said, the repair on the wrecked engine. So that's just the nature of a going concern, and we'll keep chugging.
Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. Madam Treasurer, I think this is where I had a question for you. On page 7, fellow squires, page 7 of this document, in the expense report, at the very top line, 026105 366, it shows an expenditure of 150% of this line item. Does that have to do with us needing the dumpsters for recycling? Does it have anything to do with the return of a grant, I think, that our solids waste coordinator wasn't able to get spent this year? Or is it a combination of that and other things? Can you shed a little light on that, please?
Yes, the line item that's being referred to is solid waste litter disposal within the road fund. And going forward, we are shifting those back into the general fund for hopefully better management and control. This line item was budgeted for the 1920 budget with a different administrator involved with the grant management. The litter grant is a calendar year versus a fiscal year program, so the timing of those expenditures certainly impacts how we budget or what the budget impact is. And yes, the program, or the litter program, was not fully utilized during the calendar year and resulted in a large return of funds due to, I think, transition in staffing. But the other impact is there's, again, the only items that were budgeted was the litter grant and the the waste tire grant. And at the, like I said, the 11th or 11th and a half hour, we were awarded a $10,000 recycling grant. I did not amend that recycling grant money in. So when you look on the receipt side of grants, you see that we took in about 64,000, only budgeted 54. It shows us over budget on the receipt side of Squire Booth. So it does show us to the positive that we did cover that recycling grant. But I didn't amend it in simply, and there's always a question about, do you need to amend in those monies? And with the drastic cut in the overall expenditures, I didn't make the move to amend the road budget at all because there was such a large unused balance in the transfers that we typically have to do. And so I didn't make an amendment. You know, technically, it would be, you know, so that amendment, and then it would have increased that line item. But I didn't do that because we had such a large excess overall of unspent funds in other categories within the road fund.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Susan? Seeing none, let's move to payment of bills. Any questions on payment of bills? No question on payment of bills. Let's move to the next item, other business. Before we get to anybody saying anything, I'd like for Andrew, I'd like for you to present your video. Do you have your video ready, Andrew?
Yes, Judge, just give me one quick sec to get everything up and running here.
Okay, as you know, this weekend is the 4th of July, and starting, if not already, some last weekend, but starting about Thursday, since Friday is a holiday and Saturday is as 4th of July, there's going to be a lot of fireworks around our community. So I've asked Andrew to present the video on how to be safe and how to look after your neighbors as well.
Here we go.
Hello, my name is Brian Brewer from Franklin County Fire Department. Summer is here and we often find ourselves celebrating the season with cookouts, pool parties, and fireworks. It is important to know that the use of fireworks can be extremely dangerous. Fireworks present fire hazards to nearby structures and they also pose serious risk of injury if used improperly. We want everyone to have a safe and enjoyable season, so let's take a look at some safety tips.
Only use fireworks outdoors. Kentucky law requires that fireworks are kept at least 200 feet away from any structure. Read the directions on the packaging completely before setting off any fireworks. Keep a hose or liquid water in close proximity. Alcohol and fireworks don't mix. Save your drinks for after the fireworks show, or have a designated beverage. Keep spectators at a safe distance. Fireworks should only be detonated by an adult. Children should never be allowed to be around fireworks unsupervised. Make sure your pets are in a safe, secure place before setting off your fireworks. Fireworks should never be ignited into a metal or glass container. You should never try to relight a dud firework. You should wait at least 20 minutes before properly disposing of the ribbons. You should dispose of the ribbons by letting them soak in water and then throw them away in a metal trash.
We also ask that you be courteous to your neighbors when enjoying their fireworks display. As a general rule, we ask that you try not to use fireworks after 11 p.m. You should be aware that the city of Franklin also has an ordinance that imposes strict regulations on fireworks within the city limits. You can contact City Hall for more information. Of course, the safest way to enjoy fireworks this summer is to let the professionals handle the job. Thank you for watching and have a safe and fun summer.
Thank you, Andrew. We noticed a couple things in that video, that there will not be any pool celebrations this this summer, and the fireworks have changed to September the 4th as opposed to July the 4th this year. But most of all, most importantly, along with this video, I ask that all of you that fire the fireworks off, which a lot of people of you do, and I understand that. We all understand that. But please be courteous of your neighbors. Don't fire at their houses, and please stop no later than 11 o'clock. Be courteous to your neighbors. Remember, and those of you that live in the rural areas around farms, that these fireworks have a lot influence on horses and cattle and livestock at people's farms. So be very cognizant of that. Make sure that if you're going to fire them off, you fire them away from people's farms and their grasslands too, because that could catch on fire even though we've had a lot of rain here lately, it could dry out, and we don't want to see any fires in our community. Squire Booth, you wanted to say something?
Well, you said what I wanted to say, that horses and cattle can be scared of fireworks just like our pets, dogs. So they will run away and run into something, and that's happened in Franklin County. So those causing death really, or causing so much damage that they have to be put to death. So please remember that, especially around horses. Thank you.
Anybody else? That being said, thank you. Let's now move to the voting part of our agenda. Unless there is other business, I'm sorry, other business. Squire Muller, you're first. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you, Judge. Hey, I just wanted to bring up, I'd like to request a park meeting. Squire Tracy actually brought something up to me probably a month ago about, once this COVID stuff was here to stay, about potentially doing a kind of drive-in movie thing at Lakeview Park. I reached out to Charlie Lewis. He thought it was a great idea. So I think it's something, if we could get a park meeting scheduled, and I think it's time to maybe look at our park overall and see, start doing some long-term planning. So just want to throw that out there.
Okay, we'll get one. Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. I was just going to ask if there were any committee reports. I think some of the committees have been active this past week, and just wanted to see if there was anything that would be consequence to the court to understand.
Anybody want to make a report on a committee? Squire Blackburn, you want to make a report?
Yes, thank you. The Energy Committee met today, and we met with ESG, the Energy Savings Performance Contract folks, and they're doing their preliminary findings. They did have some setbacks on their feasibility study going inside the jail to look at the inside plumbing, but that's something they're going to be working on soon, and they should have something for us in the next month or so. So that's where we are with them right now.
Okay. Anything else? Squire Moore?
Yeah, the road committee met today too, and Squire Tracy's been working on getting Shedrick Ferry paved, which it needs pretty bad. The road committee's actually been working all through this COVID, trying to get bridges built and roads fixed and trimmings done, and those things are finally being done by the state and the county. So we're out there working for y'all.
Okay, Squire Moore,
Yes.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that, because out in my district today, the state road crew was out doing some roadside maintenance on a road that now is being used as a way for people to get from the county into the city, because Old Lawrenceburg Road is closed. So I commend them, and I commend our county road department for all that they're doing. Is there roadside maintenance going on within the county right now on county roads? That are they focusing on our county road department, like one district and then moving to another? Do you know if that was brought up that way, or how's that working?
Let's let John Mitchell answer that.
Yeah, let John answer that. I know he's been working in your district.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we're actually just finished up the sixth district, mowing there, starting back in the second district, and then it'll proceed to the fourth after that, and the third, and then make a round again. And we are doing some extensive cutbacks, starting out in the fourth district right now with the mow trim, doing some big trimming there. So, and we've got several other hot spots that we're going to pretty soon.
Okay, don't forget the
John,
fifth. You missed.
I hear a lot of complaints, but I hear a lot of compliments, and 90% of the compliments are for you and your staff, and I want to thank you for it. You do a great job with little resources, and you make the road department look good for what y'all got. And I really appreciate you guys.
Okay. John Mitchell, you forgot the 5th, and so I'm just reminding you, you didn't mention the 5th, that you're gonna get back to the 5th.
Oh, yeah.
Or the first.
We'll be there.
All right.
I'll
Okay.
vouch for him, he's already been there.
Okay.
Always proud.
I know you have. I know you have. John, thank you and your crew for all that you're doing to keep our community safe and aesthetically beautiful too. All right, with that being said, let's now move to the voting part of the agenda, please.
Judge, were there any reports from constitutional officers, or do you have anything to report to us?
I do not. Nope. Anybody else? Other constitutional officers? Nope.
The county clerk. Yeah.
We had one, a great, by the county clerk, okay? Let's go now to the voting agenda. Clerk, will you call, this is the June 30th, 2020 fiscal court agenda. I mean, voting session, sorry. Voting session. Call the roll, please.
Squire Sebastian,
Here.
Squire Blackburn,
Present.
Squire Muller,
Present.
Squire Tracy,
Here.
Squire Booth,
Present.
Squire Moore,
Here.
Judge Wells.
Here. Okay, let's please stand for the pledge, and since it was J.W. Blackburn's birthday the other day, J.W., would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be glad to, Judge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Squire Blackburn, and I hope you had a nice birthday, and I know that you got a little chocolate treat today for your birthday, and that's great for
And I
you.
deserved it, Judge. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I know you deserved it. You're exactly right. Okay, the first item on the agenda is authorization for approval of minutes from our public hearing on June 9th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
I just want to say I'm glad we had the public hearing. I felt like a lot of good questions were asked that were unknowns before, and I felt like we did a good job, and I vote yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Well, I want to say to the clerk, our own fiscal court clerk, who is also the deputy judge, I should add, that writing those minutes must have taken a long time.
It sure did. Thank you, Marty.
And I would say yes.
Thank you. Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, and I'm gonna piggyback on Squire Blackburn's comment, and I'm very pleased with the number of people that spoke their mind for or against the rezone, and I would, even though the public hearing lasted 7.5 hours, which to me is kind of long. Maybe some of you it's not, but anyway, I think you can walk, at least those people that came and wanted to, everybody that wanted to speak had an opportunity, and I think that's the important thing in a public hearing, that everybody gets a chance to speak. So with that, I vote yes. And then the next item on the agenda is authorization for approval of minutes from our special meeting of June 19th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Second.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization to approve the county clerk's payment of election expenses not to exceed $25,000 for the June 23rd, 2020 primary election.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So moved.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Squire Sebastian,
I think she's froze.
you're frozen.
I'll come back to her.
Here she's moving.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Squire Blackburn?
I just want to say, Mr. Hancock did an excellent job, and I love the fact that he used some young folks from our community and get them in the process, and I vote yes.
Squire Muller?
Yes.
Squire Tracy?
Yes.
Squire Booth?
Yes.
Squire Moore?
Yes.
Judge Wells?
Yes, and on top of that, we are one of the best turnouts. Our Franklin County, once again, is one of the best in the state, and we're proud of everybody in our community, how you take voting as an important part of being a citizen of this community, of this state, and of this nation. Thank you for all of you, everybody in this community, for getting out and doing what you should do to keep our country as great as it is, and our state as awesome as it is, and our community is such a great place to live and work. Thank you. Next item is the authorization to approve the 2021 budget for the Capital Community Economic Industrial Development Authority, DBA, Kentucky Capital Development Corporation.
So moved.
Second. Judge, I'd like to make a comment. Someone sent me a message saying that I shouldn't be able to vote on this because of my business. And I just want to put it out there that I have never done any business with Mr. Tierney or for Mr. Tierney. And if anything, he's a competitor of mine. And if someone else was doing this development, I might even get some work from it. So that doesn't apply at all.
Okay.
And I also want to just state that a no vote on this would be.
Squire, we're not there yet. We're at the we're on the budget for
it's got a second, and it's time for discussion.
KCDC.
Oh.
You okay, Squire?
Yeah, I'm fine. I wondered what's going on here.
Okay.
All right. I have my notes mixed up.
Okay. I understand. I get
still
confused.
second it.
Okay. All right.
It is part of economic development too.
You're exactly right. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian?
Yes.
Squire Blackburn?
Yes.
Squire Muller?
Yes.
Squire Tracy?
Yes.
Squire Booth?
Yes.
Squire Moore?
I know how Squire Mueller felt the other day now, so yes.
Judge Wells?
Yes. All right, the next item is the second reading and approval of an ordinance amending ordinance number 8, 1987, relating to the zoning ordinance in Franklin County for 85.388 acre portion of property identified as a portion of tract number 1, 84.058 acres plus or minus, a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.00, and a portion of tract number 2, 1.331 acres plus or minus, a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.01, located at 690 Duncan Road, from Agricultural District AG to Industrial General District IG.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
And I would like to add to what I started on a while ago, that outside of the magistrate of this district, a no vote is saying take your business back to Clark County or move it to Shelby County or Woodford or wherever. Go ahead, Judge.
Squire Sebastian?
Okay, so, first, I too want to acknowledge and really just kind of share gratitude with all the people across our community who have taken a very keen interest, in the zoning process. And I read all the material on the matter. I'm gonna hold it up just so that people see how much we had to read. I mean, it's a lot. And that really, this material started being funneled to us from a January meeting of this year. And I want the community to know that none of the comments that have been made throughout the process have fallen on deaf ears. Frankly, this is just a whole lot to digest, and it's taken us a while to do that. I think the willingness of people who've researched and voiced their opinions shows their passion for Franklin County and shows their passion for Franklin County's future, how it can and how it should be shaped, how it should look. So I'm going to ask everybody to keep that fire in their belly going forward, because the comprehensive plan is supposed to be opened up and supposed to undertake an update of the plan. So if anything, really the sheer volume of comments show how clearly input is needed on the process, so that we can determine the look of Franklin County, the look really that our neighbors, and how we want to call this place our home. I heard several of the squires tonight talk about thoughtful and effective planning. And that really does enable a community to grow responsibly and provide, necessary balance between new development, which we're talking about, infill, which we really haven't touched on tonight, but is a critical part of the process, community preservation, which was touched on by a number of folks, essential services, and economic growth. I don't think I mentioned that. So there's plenty to discuss, and having a full, really roll up your sleeves, diligent update of this comprehensive plan than some sort of perfunctory, let's take a quick look at it and turn it around in a week. Really, that should be the course that we take, and that should be what our neighbors demand of us to do. So hopefully everybody will turn out to make comments and statements. So I had asked earlier, Councilor Sparks, to give us some marching orders about what we're specifically to look at tonight in making this vote. And I did write it down on this piece of paper here, KRS 100.213. That calls for us to find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or that it's not. It's one or the other. It is or it isn't. And so, I guess to be clear, all sides who have spoken on this zoning request have made very compelling statements. And emotional, there's a lot tied up in this for a lot of people. But before us tonight, we have a very narrow, I would say limited, I would also say very restricted and direct language in that KRS, which again is KRS 100.213. And as we found in multiple findings of fact, the initial findings of fact, and then again from those of the fiscal court, the future land use map does show this area as an employment center within the adopted comprehensive plan, meeting the condition that's within KRS 100.213, that the map amendment must be in agreement with the comprehensive plan. And that's the way I understand Councilor Sparks to have presented it. So with that very narrow, kind of limited, restrictive focus, that's really going to compel me tonight to vote to approve the zone amendment, strictly because of that statutory language in KRS 100.213. And it's whether I like it or not. I can't disregard the statute, because I may take some exception with the actions or the inactions of the developer, of the contractors, and of staff. So, thank you.
Okay, Squire Blackburn?
As Squire Sebastian pointed out, we've looked at this exhaustively. A lot of the court has looked at it since January. This is something I've been looking at since July. I've studied the comprehensive plan forwards and backwards. I know all 7 goals. I know all 32 policies. KRS 100.213 says is in alignment with the comprehensive plan. It's in alignment with 28.125% of it. It's in direct conflict with with 70% of it. And with that, I think the zoning is appropriate currently, and I vote no.
Squire Muller,
Can't hear you, Squire. Can't hear you, Squire.
All right, you got me now, Judge?
Yeah, gotcha.
First, I'd like to thank everyone who presented important information to us regarding the application for zone change. I would like to say that growth is one of the things our community is missing. Counties all around us are growing while we stay stagnant, trying to figure out who we are. However, smart growth is the most important type of growth we need. Our comprehensive plan was done well, but our comprehensive map was not detailed enough and overgeneralized. To draw a radius from the interstate is not good planning. There are a lot of things that need to be considered how this process is done in the future, such as more involvement from the community and more attention to land use and existing land assets. After looking at all the information provided by our community and professionals, I disagree with the zone change for this property. I believe that the best use for this land is not industrial general. My vote is no.
Squire Tracy,
Thank you. First, I want to thank everyone who contacted me to express their thoughts and feelings of support and or concerns over the Duncan Road zone change request. I can't stop thinking about a comment that was made during the process. Growth is healthy, but it needs to be done correctly. It comes down to, will a zone change approval have a negative effect on the surrounding property owners and or other Franklin County residents? Franklin County government's professional engineer, Jonathan Otis, stated that he has obvious concerns about the traffic impact and flooding of Duncan Road and flooding of other areas downstream. With that being said, I vote no.
Squire Booth,
Hi. I went through all the comments that were directed directly to me or to the court in general. I'm reading this. The members of our county fiscal court need to hear from you if you are concerned. Your email to magistrates and the county judge executive and to the newspaper might have an impact, and you'll feel like you're helping. It was like we're the final line of defense, so to speak, for the people that are concerned about this. So I vote no.
Squire Moore,
Well, I want to touch on the flooding. The only way we're ever going to get mitigation of flooding on Duncan Road is to develop this property and put in the proper retention basins and such that the developer's lawyers said that they were going to put in. Otherwise, Duncan Road is going to continue to flood, and in turn, Slickaway is going to continue to flood. And this would alleviate a lot of that, I believe. And for so many other reasons I've already stated, I vote yes.
Judge Wells,
I want to read from the planning and zoning what they said, several of the reasons they said that they were for this zone change. It says the comprehensive plan, future land use plan designates the property for employment center. The subject property is bound by industrial zoning to the east, to the west, and to the north within Franklin County. The subject property is adjacent to an established industrial park. Now I want to say that obviously you've seen tonight the passion that Squire Blackburn has, the passion that Squire Moore has, the passion that Squire Sebastian and Squire Muller and Squire Tracy and Squire Booth all have. This court has a lot of passion because they want to do a great job of representing their constituents. And everything, there's really, in my opinion, as you look at this as a community, everybody has a very valid point for what their thoughts are concerning this. But the bottom line to me is when as we grow, and you can talk about smart growth, and I understand smart growth, and I believe in smart growth, but it's still a relative statement when you say smart growth. It's your interpretation, and it's not everybody's interpretation of smart growth. And this has been an argument for this situation, that this is not the right area, this is not the right change in zoning for this area. I say to you that if this isn't the right one, then if you think if smart growth and however that's defined, as we try to move forward in this community and we try to grow, which Squire Muller appropriately said, we're on the level with Owen County. No offense to Owen County, at about 1% for 25 years, we'll grow maybe 1 or 2%. That's unsustainable for the capital city of Kentucky. It's inexcusable. But if we're going to grow, we're going to have to make some of these hard decisions, and these are definitely hard decisions. And where do we go? How do we grow? What is smart growth? Because smart growth is one opinion. Squire Booth may have an opinion of smart growth, and Squire Sebastian may have another opinion. So we're back where we were at square one in changing a zone, making a zone change to move forward. In this situation, there's a 20-inch line, water line, that is placed all around this property because years ago they believed and were told and felt like this was going to be an industrial area. That you don't put a 20-inch line around a 100-acre property with a industrial park right next to it, and actually abutting 3 sides of it, if you didn't think it was going to be an industrial area, an industrial park. This is just a piece of where we are, and I think that it's important that we consider jobs. We have a 10% unemployment rate in Franklin County, one of the highest it's ever been. Normally we're around 3%. We're normally close to the lowest. Woodford County is always around there, and Oldham County. But Franklin County has been very good. We've got a lot of people out of jobs. This will create jobs. And it's creating jobs in an area that is already, according to the land use map, ready for this. And infrastructurally, it's ready for this. And if you drive out of Industrial Park 3 and you turn right 30 yards later, 30 yards down the road, that's the entrance to what this area would have been, another industrial park. We're not talking about miles, we're talking about 30 yards. So, with that being said, I vote yes, that this is appropriate zone change.
Okay. Motion failed.
Got it. Okay. Next item. Now we need to come back and go the other way with it, and this is the authorization to approve a resolution denying the rezoning of property located at 690 Duncan Road, identified as a portion of tract number 1, 84.058 acres, plus or minus, a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.00, and a portion of tract number 2, 1.331 acres, plus or minus, a portion of PVA map number 087-00-00-031.01 from Agricultural AG to Industrial General IG. Is there a motion?
I move.
Squire Booth, Squire Blackburn, do you second it? Can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Call the roll.
Okay, so before we call the roll, do we need to decide if we are going to adopt all 16 findings of fact into the record?
Okay.
it was my understanding that,
They have to say, if you're going to, if you're going to vote yes on this, not allowing this zone change, you have to give which findings of fact you are going to use, right, Robert?
Yes, sir.
You can use all 16, well, can you use all 16? You can use whichever ones you want. So I'm gonna give you a second to make sure that you understand that you're to use the findings of fact in voting against the zone change. Squire Blackburn.
I move that we keep the first 12.
I don't think I think we're gonna have to do that individually, but as an individual, okay? Okay? Can we, Mr. Sparks, do we need to do that individually, or can they vote on it right now that they keep whichever ones? How do you do that, Mr. Sparks?
And while he's, on the line, did he write this resolution? Do we need to read it?
Well, I would hope you all would have read it.
I
but
just read
actually,
it.
Mr. Hewitt,
I just read it, Squire Booth.
based upon the proposed findings of fact that came out of that hearing last week that you all adopted, they were all incorporated. The vote is an up or down to approve the resolution or not in full. If y'all really want to parse this thing out,
No.
it's either up or down to deny it or not, and you set that the basis. The reason that the final proposed findings of fact were not approved was just procedurally, you had to have a meeting to vote on it.
Okay.
These are the findings of fact that you all agreed on in support of after that hearing. And if you're gonna make the finding, I think the finding is in the totality of the resolution would be sufficient.
Yes.
Okay, we don't have to, so there you go. That's different than what we thought. I'm glad you said that, Squire Blackburn.
I do want to say, for the sake of argument, if this is taken further with legal action, I believe I have real problems with one of the findings of fact because it doesn't agree with the comprehensive plan. It just agrees with the comprehensive land use map, the future land use map. It doesn't agree with the plan.
Well, but Squire, we've already agreed that is one of the findings of facts.
Well,
and just
you did agree, yes.
Well, we voted and we agreed, got at least 4 votes for it. And if you want to kick it out just because it's a fact that you don't think will hold up in court, that's not going to hold up in court either.
Well, I just want to point out that it's not a fact, and if you have that on the record, that's enough for me. We can vote on it the way it says.
Mr. Sparks, do you want to intervene in this discussion?
Nope, not at all. The matter before the court is to vote on the resolution as presented, which is a declination of the court and to approve the zone change. And the court's already approved the minutes, identifying what the proposed findings of fact are. Madam Clerk and Mr. Hewitt went through it in great and patient detail to construct that. In the alternative, the court's declined to issue to approve the zone change, and you all set out sufficient findings of fact to support your decision. I think no argument can be made that it's arbitrary, etc. But you have to take an action. The vote failed, and the action is now to decline to approve it. It's again, you're facing one of those, now the rubber's hitting the road. It's time to act. It's an up or down vote.
Okay. All right.
I'll do roll call.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Okay, so, in the previous item before us, had talked about that statute, KRS 100.213. And the wording really is very narrow and restrictive and pretty direct in its language. And the way I reached my decision on that is by, again, looking through the comprehensive plan, and the future land use map, which is it's a map amendment, and I'm specifically going on how restricted this language is. The future land use map does show that the area is an employment center, and I think was adopted that way within the plan. So again, whether I like it or not, whether I can't disregard what the statute says I have to do, again, whether I like it or not. So that's gonna compel me, I guess, to vote no on this the way I understand it from Mr. Sparks.
Squire Squire Blackburn, I'm sorry.
I just want to say that based on the narrow focus that we were given in KRS 100.213, I use that to unequivocally discount this application. And I vote yes in denying the zoning of property at 690 Duncan Road.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Can't hear you, Squire Tracy, unmute.
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Well, I again say, like Squire Sebastian again said, that I feel that we're the last line of defense for the people that are concerned. And I vote yes to this resolution, adoption of this resolution.
Squire Moore,
I would just like to thank Mr. Tierney for giving us this opportunity to have these discussions by extending the deadline. If not, we wouldn't have been able to have the hearings or findings of fact or any of this. And with that, I vote no.
okay. Judge Wells,
Thank you, Squire Moore. I think Mr. Tierney and his lawyer, Mr. Rump, have been excellent in trying to make sure that everybody's voices got heard. And also a big thanks to Mr. Tierney, because he has done a tremendous job of buying lots and bringing in jobs to Industrial Park number 3. So we thank him for his investment in Franklin County. And I'm sorry this didn't work out here, but we hope that he will continue to invest in our community. Before I vote, though, I'm going to bring up an issue that I think is, in my opinion, is important. It really hasn't been touched on except in the process of the public hearing as testimony, and that is we have Robert. Is it 5 properties that are labeled historic properties in the county? I know there's very few, just and a handful. And there was a historic house, and that house was torn down, and that was Mr. Tierney's prerogative to do that. It was his property. Yeah, but there is a value in historic homes on county farms in our community. And I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that one of the answers is not the government taking over and putting monies in these historic homes to revitalize them. But there is an issue out there, and I believe Ms. Wilkerson talked with you, Mr. Hewitt, and had talked earlier, the discussion of how do we preserve when you buy a piece of property, you buy 100 acres, and you have a piece of property that is historic, and it's on that property, what is incumbent upon you to keep that property up? Don't know that answer. There's a lot of questions that are out there. But those are questions that I think we as a community need to address and talk about without the fact that government has to come in and make sure and then put monies into these homes, because that's out of the question as far as I'm concerned. But there is some type of encumbrance upon people that buy property from somebody else that had a historic venue on it, and to do something to at least try to maintain it. And with that being said, I vote no on the resolution, and we move to the next item. And the next item is authorization to approve appointment of Dan Liebman to the Franklin County Tourist and Convention Commission Restaurant Association position, with a term ending June 30th, 24, replacing Sonia Sanders, who has been excellent, absolutely excellent on the tourism board, and we appreciate her great work. And we're excited about Mr. Liebman serving as a representative on the Restaurant Association.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn, Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
thank you. Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Thank you, Sonia Sanders, for your great work, and we hope that maybe in the future you can come back through another avenue and be on the Tourist Commission, because you've been a vital asset representing Kentucky State. The next item is authorization to approve appointment of Melissa Parker to the Franklin County Tourist and Convention Commission Hotel Motel Association position, with a term ending June 30th, 2024, and she will be replacing Gary Burke. And I congratulate Mr. Burke and applaud him for his great service to the board, and thank him so much. Squire Booth?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
I'm going to explain my vote in court. I did try to do some investigating. I went in through our ordinances. I know that we're codifying, and it specifies that 2 names will be given for consideration. And right now, I really do think we need a diversity of perspective on the board, because if we appoint this person, it will be 2 representatives from the Hotel Motel Association that work for the same hospitality company. And this person reports to a person in that hospitality company that's already on the tourism board. And so I think that would, in my mind, demonstrate a lack of representation across the industry, the remainder, I guess, of that industry in our community. So with that, I'm going to have to vote no. I'm sure this person is a great person, but I just think it's kind of stacking the deck for one company.
Squire Blackburn,
I agree with Sherry in a lot of ways, but I do think the tourism folks want to do everything they can to make tourism better. And I'm sure that the judge discussed this appointment with them, and I vote yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
I agree with Squire Sebastian, I vote no.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells.
So let me do some clarification. Yes, thank you, Squire Blackburn. I did. There is an issue, and the issue is this, Squire Sebastian, is that 75%, somewhere along that line, of the motels in Franklin County are owned by one corporation. And so it's pretty hard to get away from. And then when you get there, you've got to make sure that they live in Franklin County. That's one. The second, that they will serve. That's 2. And the last nominee that I presented, I went the same route that you did, Squire, and they didn't want to serve anymore. And so I know Melissa Parker, and she comes she's very independent, and she will stand up for what is right and defend tourism and help us move forward with tourism. So I vote yes on that one. The next item is authorization to approve an appointment.
Judge,
Yes. Yes.
Judge,
Yes. Yes, Squire.
Can I say thing, and to your point, this has nothing to do with a person, it has to do with the industry. And again, you made a great point. I think I did try again to do some research, and I saw an article where, this was from 2019, where that company has about 60% of the rooms in the community. But again, we're seeing a lot of things come into play here, bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs. So we really have to look at the changing economy. We've talked about that a whole lot tonight, and keep pace with the times to ensure that the industry-wide is being represented. So that's the only comment that I had in that regard. It has nothing to do with the person again. Thank you so much.
Okay. The next item is authorization to approve appointment of Randolph Smith to the Tax Assessment Appeals Board with a term ending December 31st, 2020, and it will be replacing Don Jeffers. And Don Jeffers, thank you for serving last year, and you made it very clear that you would only serve one year at this position. And Mr. Smith is a gentleman that saw in applications online and has called, and I told him that I would, when there was an opening on this board, I would recommend him.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
I want to explain this, and I am so happy that people are taking the opportunity to go online and fill out these forms. I've had some folks contact me about some boards and indicate that they have filled out forms, and I'm happy to see this one come through to fruition, and I wholeheartedly say yes. Thank you.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Don Jeffers is my neighbor, and I agree with the judge that he did a good job. I'm sure he did, even though I didn't have an appeal before him. He hadn't paid my taxes, but I vote yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Yes. Next item is authorization to approve the budget transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Yes. Next item is authorization to receive the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
you ready for me to call roll?
Yeah, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
I'm a yes, and I want to thank Susan again for the roller coaster every year we've had, and job well done.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Yes. Next item is payment of bills. Is there a motion offered to deny any payment of any bills? Seeing none, the bills are to be paid. Next item is authorization to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian,
Yes.
Squire Blackburn,
Yes.
Squire Muller,
Everybody be safe this holiday weekend, yes.
Yes.
Squire Tracy,
Yes.
Squire Booth,
Yes.
Squire Moore,
Yes.
Judge Wells,
Okay, just a reminder, wear your mask, please. Be safe.
Amen to that.
Wear your mask. Secondly, the 4th of July is a holiday where fireworks are being fired, and I know that all the squires here, because I sure hear a bunch of it, about people complaining that the fireworks are going off at midnight, at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. Do not do that. Take in consideration of your neighbors. And if there's something going on that shouldn't be going on with fireworks, please call the sheriff's department and make sure you report any situations that could be very dangerous. With that being said, happy 4th of July to everybody. Thank you for watching. We are adjourned. Yes.